Easter, a time for fake grass, plastic eggs, these things, chocolate bunnies, and people dressed as bunnies. And then there are the weird parts of Easter, like fake grass, plastic eggs, these things, chocolate bunnies, and people dressed as bunnies, which is interesting. But what does all this stuff have to do with Easter? And if this holiday is about more than candy and wearing uncomfortable clothes to church and lunch with your relatives, what makes Easter happy?
Hey, so tonight I wanted to share a little bit about Easter. I know it's a little bit weird, it's kind of early, but our stores have already started selling stuff, I feel like forever ago. All about Easter. There's Easter Bunny, there's the candy, there's little baskets, all the weird, like plasticky grass stuff that just seems to get everywhere is all over the place. But Easter can be fun. Even if you're getting older, it's still fun. I don't know if you still get an Easter basket, but it's so fun to get an Easter basket to get candies or prizes. When I was a kid, we always did Easter egg hunts, and the part that was hard was the fact that sometimes we'd forget to look for all the eggs or we couldn't find some, and then we'd be like, what's that smell? It's like rotting. But I have my phone because I wanted to show you Easter is fun, but then there's some random families who love to make their children take pictures with the Easter Bunny with some creepy thing. My parents, we never did that. At least I don't remember. But okay, let me show you a few of them that I just thought they were so funny. Okay, look at this bunny. Oh my goodness, it's so creepy. It's like the worst Easter Bunny. Do you see his face? And that little baby girl, I was so sad. Okay, here's another one. Look at that. And that little baby's like, what is that? It looks so creepy. Okay, this little girl, look at that. Wah, she's so sad. Oh, okay, this one's the worst. It's like, it has this vintage color, and like that makes it reminds me of like a horror film. Gotta look at this one. Look at that. No, so creepy, that would scare me. No, my hunch is that your parents aren't making you dress up and take a picture with the Easter Bunny. Maybe they still are, but it may not freak you out as much as it's annoying. But we can all relate to the feeling of those kids that we just saw on my phone, right? The fear of something. We all have different fears that we may have. When we're a kid, you might be afraid of your broken toy. This is my little kid's broken toy. You may have afraid of like the scary monsters when you're a kid, right? But as you get older, you have different fears. You may have fears about your report cards, what kind of grades you're going to have. You may have fears about fitting in or making the team. Or maybe you're afraid as you're getting older, like, will people catch you doing something stupid and they'll catch you doing it on their phone and post it to something, or it'll go viral or something. Your family, your parents may even be getting scared, and they may be afraid of toilet paper and sanitizer and all the craziness that's going on, right? We have all of these fears. Right now, there's a lot of fears going on around us, right? We are afraid of this coronavirus that's going around. And what does that mean? And for some of us, it's really boiling down to this. It could be this fear of death. And I know some of you guys are going, whoa, that went heavy. And it's really the reality. And some of you, death may not really be what's on your mind. But if you think about some of these things that we're afraid of, it's really the fear of something ending. It's final, which is what death is, right? You may be afraid of relationships falling apart or breaking. For some of you, a lot of things have been canceled. Trips have been canceled. Events that you were really looking forward to have been canceled. You're maybe even having a hard time because you are missing your friends and you're afraid of what does that mean for your relationships. And it really creates this thing of something's going to be final. So even if it's not death that you're afraid of, death really represents this deep fear of things ending and being afraid. And so tonight, I kind of want to kind of give us a little bit of encouragement and hope, because Easter is actually all about hope, that death itself has already been won by Jesus. Because Jesus, when we celebrate Easter, we remember how he came to the earth. He lived life, but he died on a cross for us, for our sins, for the things that we sin against each other and against God. But then he came back to life. He literally conquered death, which is crazy to think about. And so tonight, this is a reminder that that actually changes even our fears now that we have. This should impact us, and it actually even impacted a guy named Paul. We've been studying him as we studied the book of Galatians in our series that we just finished. But Paul, he was this radical guy who, before he met Jesus, was trying to kill Christians. He was trying to get them to stop believing in Jesus and spreading these, what he thought were rumors or lies about Jesus, by making them afraid that he was going to kill them because he was capturing them and imprisoning them. And so he was using death as a motive to make them change their behaviors. And the reality is, we experience that too, right? Right now, so many of our decisions are being met, and some of the things that people are doing, it's boiling down to our fears, right? And I'm not saying that canceling school and all of these things is just fear-based, because we recognize what the coronavirus could be doing, and we want to be responsible, but we're afraid of what it's going to do. And we recognize that because of that, we're having to make these decisions. But we do this in our life all of the time, not just now, but right now we're really experiencing how fear and how these things really do control us. We're seeing that as people are fighting at the grocery store, and people are fighting in the news and trying to make all these decisions because we're afraid of what's going to happen. And so tonight, I want to go to these words that Paul said that really reminds us of the hope of who Jesus is, of what he has done. And Paul, in the book of 1 Corinthians, we're actually in chapter 15, so if you have some sort of Bible or device, feel free to grab it. But Paul kind of was talking all about how Jesus had died on a cross, how he rose, and how this impacted us. And he had experienced this amazing thing about Jesus. He met him on a road, and after he met Jesus, he met him on a road as he was going to go and find Christians and kill them. Jesus intervened in his life. He met Jesus. And after this moment, Paul became the most radical missionary. And it was as if he was not afraid of anything. He was so bold. And so Paul spent his life talking about this hope in Jesus. He wasn't afraid of death. He wasn't afraid of being persecuted, of being chewed out for all his faith, any of those things. He wasn't allowing fear to rule and guide him because he had a hope in who Jesus was. And so in this letter that he wrote to the Corinthians in chapter 15, he talked all about Jesus, talked all about how he had come and died for us and how this meant life for us. But listen to what he said. In 15, verses 55 through 56, he said, "Where, O death?" Oh, wait, no. It starts back. It starts back in verse 54. It says, "Death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting?" And I love this because it's like Paul is just calling it out, saying, death no longer has victory because what Jesus did on the cross, he literally went and he died. And all the disciples were freaked out going, this is what we were afraid of. Death is final. This is the worst thing that can happen. It's ending. What we hoped in life, it's all ending. We no longer can put our trust in Jesus. That's what the disciples were thinking of when Jesus died. But Jesus rose. He came back to life and he defeated death. And that means that because of his resurrection, death can no longer defeat us. I want you to think about that. Death can no longer defeat us. We no longer have to live in fear of any kind of death because Jesus destroyed death once and for all. And so really what that means is for Easter means that fear isn't final. If Jesus can defeat death, he can defeat the things that we're afraid of too. Think about that. Jesus has the power to defeat death. So whatever you're afraid of, whatever fear is motivating you or your family or the world around us, think about how Jesus has the power to defeat even that. I want you to think about that. Isn't that kind of crazy, you guys? I mean, as we're kind of processing all of the things going on in our lives, it's just such a reminder. It's such a reminder how powerful God is. And it's hard to bring that back home, but it's hard to deal with the disappointments that are going on around us. There's a lot of things that we don't get to choose. We don't get to choose how things are going to go, if school's getting shut down, if certain events are taking place, and we don't know. We don't know how long. Everyone's going to have to sort of hunker down in place. We don't know how long things are going to be canceled for. We don't know how long any of this is going to happen. But we do know that Jesus was able to defeat even death. And because of that, we know that our fear, the feelings we have, are not final. We have hope. We can trust in a God who's bigger than even the coronavirus. And so my encouragement to all of us today is let's stop kind of just allowing our fear to drive us. And let's start looking for hope. Start asking Jesus, God, give me eyes to see what you're doing in the world. Give me eyes to see how I can have hope even during this time. And ask yourself, is fear holding me back from doing something? Maybe this is an opportunity to put your trust in God. Maybe this is the time where you go, okay, God, how can you use me even in this crazy time right now? Are there things that I could be doing? Could I be calling friends and checking in on them? Is there a neighbor that you know that's older who can't leave their house and they can't go buy groceries, and maybe you can help them? Think about that. Has fear been holding you back in some way in your past that maybe now is the opportunity to go, I don't have to live in fear. I'm going to step out in boldness and trust Jesus and move forward. And I don't know what your step is. I don't know where your fear is at. I don't know if it's the coronavirus or maybe it's something else that's been going on with school, that's been going on that maybe even this issue that's kind of making it seem bigger is causing. But I do know that if you're someone who believes that Jesus defeated death and that follows him, then you have his power inside of you. I want you to think about that. If you have put your trust in Jesus, then God has actually given you his power. In fact, in Romans chapter 8, verse 11, Paul said this. He said, the Spirit of God who raised Jesus from the dead lives in you. That's kind of crazy, right? That the same power that raised Jesus, that conquered death, has been given to you, to me. And so no matter what we're going through, no matter what's going on, God has actually given us his strength, his peace, his whatever to help us get through this moment, to get through this season, to get through this time. And so each one of us, we can prove that fear doesn't have power over us. What does that look like? It may look like having hope. It may look like doing our best during this time, trying to love others even though we're not sure what's going to happen next. Acting as if tomorrow is still there and is good. And today is still good even though things have been canceled and life is challenging. And so my hope is that we can kind of wrestle with that. We can lean into that. And hopefully, if we're able to break up into small groups today, that you can also process that together. Because this whole message that fear has been conquered by Jesus, that God conquered death, and so he therefore conquered our fears, it reminds us that that's why Easter really is so happy. So let me pray for you guys, and hopefully we can have some discussion together. God, I just thank you so much for just who you are, how much you love us, how much, God, just how much that you see us personally, and you know us intimately. You know the things that we're afraid of. You know the things that maybe we're even embarrassed to talk about, that we're just kind of been letting fear rule our lives, maybe even before this whole coronavirus thing has been going on. And so, God, I pray that tonight you would help each one of us to be able to lean into you. If any of us have never chosen to follow you, I pray that tonight we will make that step. That even in this time of discussion, that we'll say, hey, I want that peace. I don't want to live in fear, and I want to have that spirit live within me so that I can conquer my fears too. I pray that that can happen. And God, help us to see your joy. Help us to see your peace. And I pray that tonight as we discuss, Lord, God, you'll help us to take steps. Help us to connect and have fun, because we need that, God. And we know that you are the source of all life and joy. So God, we thank you for who you are. We thank you for all you're doing. And yeah, you're good, God. Thanks, God. Amen. All right, you guys. Thanks so much for joining us. We are going to try to split you guys up into some small groups. So bear with me as we try to figure out all of these details, all right? So let's see what we can do.